Hi, I'm Stephen K Amos, and welcome to a new episode of Me, I Blame the Parents. I'm chatting to my hand-picked comedy chums about their mums and dads, who were either of the silent generation, born between 1928 and 1945, and the baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964. Which, incidentally, coincided with the introduction of the contraceptive pill, and also a massive sigh of relief from the nation's exhausted parents. My guest today is a comedian, writer and broadcaster, along with myself, co-founder of the Big Love, Big Laughs annual fundraiser. I asked her about having a heartfelt, one-to-one chat with her dad.
I saw him being bad-tempered, quite selfish, but when he shone his charm on you, I'm really glad I had that evening to know what it was that my mum liked about you.
And how coming of age and religion can lead to confusion.
Tampons and Tampaxes weren't allowed at the convent because you shouldn't know where to put it.
Please welcome Jo Caulfield. I asked her what generation her parents fell into.
My parents, what you're calling the silent generation.
Mm-hmm.
My mum was born in 1930, my dad in 1933. I actually spoke to my mum this morning. She is 90.
Wow.
And she went, well, I don't know about being called the silent generation. So, have you ever known that from me, Jo? No, mother, I haven't.
So Scottish, is that the background? Irish?
Northern Irish, just me doing a bad accent. Yeah, Northern Irish. My mum grew up very much in the country. She would say, in the wilds of the countryside. So she just said that her war was very different to my dad's war. My dad grew up in Belfast and was there. Belfast was bombed quite badly and then bombed again because he said in a very Irish way, they thought, well, they won't do it twice. But they did. So his family home was bombed and then he had to go down to relatives in the south. So he had a very different feeling about the war. My mum was always like, but we had loads to eat. If we were hungry, we'd just kill a pig. There was like no shortages. It was lovely. The exciting thing, some GIs came and a few people got nice husbands and went off to America. And I think in a way, my dad, because he was so conventional, but he wasn't a conventional person. And I think part of him was like, like this, they get to do the thing that I would have liked to have done.
Right.
But he was an English teacher. And then to get even more security, and to get out of Northern Ireland, he joined the Air Force, and it was very conventional, but he wasn't suited to the Air Force. When I think about it now, I think what my dad wanted, he wanted to be David Niven in films about the Air Force. Also, my dad, which is weird, although he grew up in Belfast, he has a really posh English accent. That was another of his affectations.
Right.
My mum thought he was English when she met him at university, thought he was. And the only English people that went to the uni in Belfast were all the Catholic clerical students. So she thought he was training to be a priest, this nice, handsome man. He learned it off the radio. That's how he wanted to talk.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
So he was quite sort of flamboyant and odd. And so I suppose in a way, I think maybe he liked the fact that we all did go off and do the things we wanted rather than be conventional.
Yeah. Can you see bits of your mum and dad in you?
I definitely see my mum. I see her will. So I've got a thing, was ripping up a carpet when we moved, and I found out that the carpet had moths, and I thought, right, I've got to get that out of here as soon as possible. It was like I had the strength of 10 men. I just ripped this carpet out, and it was really hard work, but I just thought, I've got to get this out of the house or there's going to be moths everywhere. Tore it out, and ripped it up. And I told my mum, I said, I found moths. And she goes, now did you rip it out immediately? I went, oh my God, I did. And she went, that's what I'd have done. And I can see I've got quite a lot of her steeliness, I suppose, about her, and also the way she is. She doesn't bother with people she doesn't like at all.
Yeah. My mum would not suffer fools gladly at all. Is it a gender thing?
I mean, maybe because the men tend to die. So I don't know, they die younger. So you get more time with your mum when she's older. And I'm really enjoying this time with her because it's interesting. And I see the girl in her, which is gorgeous to see. Like this man came round to do something with the boiler. And then he tried to sell my mum the Hive. That was it. You know where you can do your heating online. And I was there and he said, well, your daughter will be able to control your heating. And I started sniggering. And my mum went, what? And he said, well, I know what you people are like. You won't put the heating heating on, you'll just put an extra blanket on, won't you? And you won't. And my mum said, I'll put the heating on. And then he went, well, it'll be good because your daughter, now where do you live? And I said, Scotland. And he went, well, your daughter in Scotland, she'd be able to put your heating up for you from Scotland. And my mum was like, she is not... She's not going to be touching my heating. And then she said to this man, and she was laughing, and I couldn't stop laughing. And the man was like, oh my God, these two, I'm getting out of this house. And she went, men have tried to control me all my life. I don't think you're the one going to do it with your hive thing, just like that. And then when she'd broken her hip the first time, they sent someone round in the evening, and this man came in, and he just comes in the door and he goes, all right, love, putting on the plastic gloves. And I was thinking, what is he going to do to my mother? And we just went, no, we're fine. And we couldn't stop laughing. And my mum going, it was the rubber gloves. And for my mum to say that, because that was rude.
Yeah.
And then we were looking at old photos and seeing her as a girl as well. And seeing that she was quite tough. And then seeing that my dad was not easy and how she really made his life easy by what she did to kind of protect him in a way.
Yes.
Weirdly, what I have inherited from my dad, how I feel him in me sometimes is when I'm gardening. And it's because my dad was always mad on gardening. And somehow it's in you. And I love tools the same way he loved tools. And I'm also I never research anything. He never researched anything. Just like, try and put up some shelves. And there would be a disaster. And I looked at some shelves of my mum's the other day because they're completely wonky and they've been like that for 20 years. Terrible.
I think that's such a lovely image. You saw your mum go back to that girl-like state. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because when I see my dad in his 80s go back to that childlike state, it seems like he's doing it for attention. Like, for example, I've seen him develop a limp all of a sudden, where he's not had a limp before. It's like, what are you doing? Did you find out with your dad? Do you ever see him in his childlike state?
He was, I think, most of his life. I think he was quite childlike. He never thought things through. We were just the family dragged around on a whim of what he was going to do next. And after the Air Force, it was very chaotic because he never thought things through. And my mum would just be running behind, trying to gather us up and get us somewhere to live. And he could be good fun because of that. Like, I do remember playing with him sometimes as a kid. And because he would really enter into the spirit of it, particularly make-believe games, could get quite serious. And I think that maybe was sort of unusual. Yeah.
Were your parents creatures of habit?
There was things that were, I suppose, like traditional things. My mum and dad liked to be quite grand about things. They liked gin and tonics before dinner. And things that I remember, and then someone said, oh, so they drank a lot. And I went, oh, yeah, that's what it is. I always thought of it as like, no, they really wanted to be in middle class was very important. And they wanted to do things properly and have gin and tonics before dinner and then wine with dinner. And then you have port. And then you go, oh, that's not normal. It's not normal to do that all the time. That I loved it when they had people for dinner because they would do things very formally and properly. Although it would also end up with everybody being drunk and there being loads of noise and my dad playing the guitar. And so in that way, I thought they were fun like that. They were unconventional.
In terms of your family units, how many siblings do you have and where did you fall in?
I'm the youngest. I have a brother and sister. My sister was first, and she's very much thought that was all that was needed. She'd never quite understood why these other ones came along. She did say, she just would look at us and go, I don't know what they're here for. They've got me. So she was oldest, then my brother, then my mum and dad moved to England, Wales first, and I was born in Wales. So as a kid, I was always like the Welsh child.
The Welsh child, the outsider.
Yeah, always the outsider. And as the youngest, people always say you're spoilt when you're the youngest. But you don't know that because you've got nothing to compare it to.
Sure.
And I think it's just because the older ones have fought the battles and they're looking at you going, well, I got hell when I was smoking and nothing's happened to you. But your parents have learned, haven't they? And they go, oh, it's not so terrible. They're going to start smoking when they're 14. And we'll just have to put up with it. And then the other thing that happened was when my dad joined the Air Force. And at that time, the Air Force would pay for your children to go to boarding schools because you moved every 2 years. So my brother and sister being older, they went to boarding school first. And I do remember a time my mum and dad went to the library or something and they hadn't told me, but my mum said they had. And I came home from school and they weren't there. And quite quickly, I just assumed that they'd left me. And my mum is like, oh my God, how could you think such a thing? And I said, I wasn't that concerned about it. I just thought, well, obviously they didn't really want any of us because they've sent us away. And now they've gone, well, there's only her left. So my main priority was I was going to talk to the station commander and say, could I keep the house? Because when Anne and James come back from school, they'll need somewhere to live. It's quite obvious. I understood that my parents, they were like, oh, we've had enough of them and they've gone somewhere else and won't be coming back. And then I think they came back within about half an hour of this trauma. But I was so sure also that I could survive perfectly well on my own.
Do you know, there's two...
I remember going into the cupboards and seeing food and going, well, there's plenty of food, so it'd be fine.
I'm a twin, as you know, and my sister and I, we fall in the middle. So when I saw my parents, the way they treated the younger siblings, in fact, the last one, we were insanely jealous because she never got chastised for anything. I remember once, I think I was about 8 years of age, and I was so angry with my parents that I ran away from home. And I was literally just hiding next door. And I was there for about an hour, wondering why nobody was looking for me. And I went back home and I could have sworn that they'd changed the locks, but I was using the wrong key.
My brother, he ran away from home and he's the middle child. So maybe it's a middle child thing. That's how you display, how you act out. Because he ran away probably about that same age. Because I remember him running away because he had one of those little kid suitcases. And my mum said to him, well, let me just check what you've got. And he said, I've got everything I need, or pompous. And my mum looked and he'd got his stone collection. That's what he was taking with him. And again, he did that thing, marched off and then sort of slunk back about 15 minutes later.
What do you believe to be your earliest memory of your mum or dad?
It's difficult being the youngest because people tell you things. They'll talk a lot about memories and then expect you to know and then realise, oh, you weren't even born or you were like 9 months old. My first memories are probably about 4, a house we were in on an Air Force base in Wiltshire, which was an amazing house. It was gorgeous. And my mum always said she thought, oh my God, she was like, we're landed gentry. This house is amazing. And she thought that's what it would be like. It just so happened that house was free and we never got as nice a house again as that one. And I have a weird memory of blackcurrant tea, which was blackcurrant jam with hot water. And you got that if you were ill. And I remember saying to my mum, but what you mean like Ribena? And my mum went, well, no, it was Ribena. And I went, it wasn't. It was blackcurrant jam and hot water. It was like the cheap version or whatever, homemade Ribena. But it was still tasted quite nice, but it was not Ribena. And I remember that and thinking, I used to do that quite a lot, pretend to be ill so that I would get nice stuff.
When I think back, I can't even remember being in a house long enough because my parents used to buy a dilapidated house, do it up, move again so they could make money, go further up the property ladder. They thought of themselves as maybe property developers. We actually thought we were in the witness protection program because that's how often we moved. My earliest memory is my dad not being present. And that's only because he worked so hard. He did 3 or 4 jobs. We rarely saw him. And the one phrase that sticks out is mum always saying, wait till your father gets home.
I think a lot of parents were absent. That's when you asked me for your earliest memory. And there's not of my parents. It's my brother and sister. And my dad was working. My mum always worked. So in the mornings, I would go to nursery school. So I hadn't started proper school. So I was maybe not 4 yet. And my mum was working as a teacher in a primary school. So because they didn't have childcare, my mum would take me in the afternoon. I would go to the school my mum taught in. And I remember, God, I hated it so much. It was so traumatic because the nursery school was just heaven. I loved it. I was really at home there and my friends, and it was all loving and caring, and you knew exactly where you were. And then I went to this primary school with like kids who were 8 and they were mean, who were just, it was like adults to me. And it was horrendous. And I remember I never knew where to sit. And they would go, "You can't sit there." And I was like, "I don't know where to sit. I don't know where to go." And then my mum would come in, but it wasn't my mum. It was my mum, the teacher mum.
Right.
So she wasn't like my mum. And I would just sit there really wanting her to be my mum. And the moving, because we had that in the Air Force, every 2 years, then you move and you go to a new school. And now my mum's going, "Oh yeah, you just lost all your friends." And you did, you just lost all your friends. And she said, "Oh yeah, we used to have parties where the adults, if someone was posted, and all the adults would have a party and say, 'Oh, we're going to miss you,' and we'd all keep in touch." But we never thought about it for the children, because that's what parents were like then. You didn't think of things from children's point of view. And I remember my really good friend Claire Simmons, to this day, I don't know what happened to her. Like, we were best friends. And then the next day, Claire was gone. That's it. She just disappeared. It was a bit like people just died, because you never, ever saw them again, never heard from them. It wasn't like they'd go, "Oh, she's going to write to you," or anything. No.
Yeah.
They're just gone.
Looking back, my parents never sat us down and had a conversation with us, didn't consult us in anything. The first time we started getting pocket money was when all of us started going, "Mum, Dad, people are getting pocket money at school. We're not getting anything." And then they gradually gave us like £1 a week, whatever it was. And about 6 months later, I remember so clearly my dad saying, "Oh, why don't you all give me your pocket money and then I'll put it in the bank for you." Till this day, I've not had that money back.
Yes,
I've not had that money back. His recollection of that event is completely different to the actual facts.
Yeah, they're known as the injustices. And I have a lot of them where they'll tell a story and I say, again, that is not what happened and that is not why I did it. One of them was we used to go every summer to Northern Ireland on holiday, see all our cousins and everything. And there's a place in Donegal, like a seaside town, and there's a fairground, Buncrana. And we were there, and my dad is always one for the big gesture. So my dad said, "I'm going to buy all the children a Knickerbocker Glory," because there was an old Italian cafe, one of those seaside Italian cafes, proper, like 50s style-y, 60s-ish, on the seafront. So we all went. I mean, I think my dad regretted it because he forgot that my Auntie Mary has 8 children. Right. So there was a lot of us. So there's probably like 16 children that he was going to buy Knickerbocker Glories for. So we had to do it in 2 lots. So the first lot went and got one, and I was in the first group. And I mean, as a kid, I'd never seen anything so huge. We were all amazed by them, and I loved it because the cousins loved it so much. And so I knew that my dad had done a good thing, and that they were all thinking, "Oh, Uncle Bill, he's great. He's bought us these Knickerbocker Glories. Oh my God, you've never seen anything like it." And they were so thrilled. So then we came back, and I was all about the Knickerbocker Glories, and my dad had to bring the second lot of us. And I went, "Oh, I'll come." And he went, "Oh, will you now?" And then all the adults were laughing, going, "Oh, greedy little Joe. Look at greedy Joey. Oh, little greedy Joey wants another Knickerbocker Glory." And to this day, I say to them, I never for a moment thought I would get a second Knickerbocker Glory. That wasn't what it was about. I wanted to see how pleased my cousins would be. I wanted to be there to see their reaction because I knew that they were going to love it. But the adults immediately judged me and put a nasty judgment on me. And that is one of the historical injustices.
I love that. Historical injustices. I'm going to use that phrase when I speak to my dad next. That's what I'm going to say. Historical injustices. I remember going to see my cousin at my aunt's house, and I think my aunt was about 8 at the time. I was there with my dad, and my cousin mentioned, "Oh, remember, Mum, there was a room in the house that the kids weren't allowed to go into because that was called the visitors' room. And it was really tidy and it was locked. But if we had visitors, family, friends, parents would open the doors to that room and we'd all sit in there like we used it on a regular basis." I turned to my dad and I went, "Oh, God, you used to do that." My dad went mental. "No, we didn't. Lock our doors to our children, pretend we've got a secret room." I'm like, "Dad, you did it. You had doilies. You had those hideous things on the back of the sofa. We had a table of 3 that locked in together with marble tops. We were never allowed in that room." my dad was so angry that I had embarrassed him in front of my aunt and cousin by reminding him of something he actually did.
It was a big thing also, that behaving well. But I think that's also, they'd grown up very, very strictly as well, because things were much harder. And you, like with my mum, basically she'd gone to primary school and they said, now after primary school, there's not really much point educating the girls because they're going to get married soon. And her granddad went, no, but Margaret's smart. She had 4 brothers. And so they found this friend who was an old friend of the family, Margaret Maguire, who was rich. And she lived near the good Catholic school. And my mum boarded with her, and she would have to cycle 14 miles to get to this school every day, there and back. And she said, now, Margaret Maguire, she was a good woman, but she was very peculiar. And she told me some gorgeous stories about this woman. You go, God, it was hard for kids. One of the cats had kittens, and then the cat died. And Margaret Maguire said, well, this is just terrible now because those kittens need a mother and they don't have one. So said to my mum, Margaret, she says, now, Margaret, you'll have to kill the kittens. My mum was like 13 or something and had to kill the kittens. She told her how, like literally like in a cartoon, put them in the sack, put some rocks in and throw them in the river. And I said, what did you learn from that? And I was thinking, sort of trauma. And my mum didn't. She went, I just learned that sometimes there's really hard things in life you've got to do. I was like, God, what a lesson. It wasn't, she said, I wasn't re-traumatized. It was like I would prepared myself for other terrible things I might have to do. I was like, what, like drown your own children? What else might you have to do?
I do appreciate that they did have things very, very differently to us. For example, the idea of sex and desires of the flesh. If we were sitting down as a family watching television, if anything remotely sexual or even the hint of flesh came on the telly, my dad, like a ninja, would jump out of the sofa and turn the channel over. I was just wondering, did your parents even have the talk with you?
Oh, God, no. Oh, my God, no. I went to a convent school, so the nuns there were just, sex was just this, really, if you could avoid it all your life, that was the best thing, because it would end very badly. And you were constantly told stories about girls who'd been gotten with child and then their lives are ruined. You were terrified. I left there and then went to a comprehensive, just terrified that I'd get pregnant immediately. Somebody looked at me. So it was never any talk. I had a confusing talk with my mum about periods. Now, the nuns had already shown us a film. Girls get a film, and it's basically you see a girl riding a horse. So you go, oh, okay, so I could ride a horse. I don't ride horses, but okay. Tampons and Tampaxes weren't allowed at the convent because you shouldn't know where to put it.
Wow.
That was the thing, because they thought that would lead to you discovering pleasures.
Right.
And we must avoid that at all costs. So some of the sixth form girls would use Tampax and tampons, but it was really, really frowned upon because you would discover things about yourself and you weren't meant to do that. But I remember when I was trying to put a Tampax in for the first time, and it was that thing of going, well, I don't know, is that the thing? Because you don't know. And then my mum told me a story, because I always remember being in the kitchen and the washing machine was going round. And my mum said, it's a bit like the washing machine. There's a cycle and it'll happen every month and we need to get you some sanitary towels. That was it. That was the only thing she ever told me about. Sex, no. Birth control, anything like that. I think they just assumed you would find it out. But I think there was a lot of that was bad. But luckily, I had an older sister who got into that very quickly. So it told me everything. Yeah.
I personally just found it very strange that my parents would never even broach the subject, bearing in mind I've got 6 siblings myself. Although I should thank my lucky stars that in looking back, I'd much rather have gone through 35 years of puberty as opposed to my parents going, okay, Stephen, you put the penis in the vagina. That is how it goes. So do you think then, having watched them grow and maybe their views change, do you think they mellowed with age?
Definitely we talk about more things now. Also because my father's dead now. So talking with my mum is different because there isn't that of him being uncomfortable with subjects that we might talk about. I think now I can see it should be more open to changing her mind on things, whether my dad would just be, oh, that's not suitable conversation. So we do talk more openly, and quite funny how she has changed her mind on things. Like I was going through her mail because she just keeps everything that comes through the letterbox, absolutely everything. So every time I go and visit her, we go through a pile of things and I go, okay, let's only keep the phone bills just of the last 2 years, not from the last 20 years. Let's throw the others away. But she also had in there, and I said, oh, it's some sort of charity. What are these people about? She goes, oh, they're the saving of the unborn. And she goes, but I've changed my mind on that. So it was obviously an anti-abortion Christian charity group. And I know she did go on a walk once, an anti-abortion, pro-life thing. And she just went, I've changed my mind on that because I don't think you should have them. But what else are you going to do? So no, I've changed my mind. And I was like, oh, good. Yes. And I thought, well, it's also nice that you're still thinking about things as well. And I think quite liberal. My mum, like my best friend when I was like 15, was gay and quite clearly gay. I didn't know that and he didn't know that. We were just new romantics and it was okay to wear makeup and lots of lace, at that time. And he loved David Bowie and then he loved Boy George. And then he's still my best friend. And then when I went to London and just so happened loads of my friends were gay and it was just a thing that my mum kind of went, oh, right. So that's, and she went, oh, we didn't used to really talk about gay people. And then she went, I don't know if we did have them. And I went, no, you did. And she went, yes, but it was just funny how we didn't talk. And now she's all for it. And she'll talk about people on TV and go, I think they're in the gay community. That's what she calls it, which sounds nice. Sounds like the WI, doesn't it? Sounds more like you're sort of making jam and crocheting than sucking cock. I think that's the way my mum thinks of it. So it's nice that she is open. And also a very funny thing, when we were kids, I don't remember, this was with my sister, so I would have been about 2.5, and it was this base, and we used to get American Air Force people come over, and the new neighbours, were African-American family. And they had little kids the same age, and my mum and their mother got on really well next door to each other because I think they were both a bit fish out of water because my mum was like, everyone was very English and she thought the English were quite cold. And this woman was like from the South and she was really friendly and she would bring cookies. Like we never had soft, chewy American cookies. We were eating English biscuits, custard creams, which are disgusting. And then you eat a soft, chewy with chocolate in it cookie. So we loved these people. And my sister particularly loved them, absolutely loved them and was friends with the little girl. And then they got posted. So then there was that big, terrible sadness. And my sister was crying because they'd gone, these lovely Americans. And my dad was like, well, there'll be other Americans come. We'll get more Americans. So that sort of pacified her. And then my dad said, oh, there's new American coming. So Annie was all excited. There's new Americans. And so it was one of those like Greek people. So they'd get families from the streets. So I think we were sort of wouldn't have barbecues then. I think they just put up tables and people would eat sandwiches outside, but it would be get to know each other sort of thing. And these Americans were there, and my sister went up to them, demanded to meet these Americans. Who were they? Looked at them, started crying immediately and saying, but they're not American. They're not American. Look at them. They're not black. They're not proper Americans. So it's like, oh, God, was she so right on. They're not proper American. But just wouldn't hear of it, that these people were American, and that was that. But my mum was always like, so then we moved to London, very multicultural then. That was new for my mum, coming from the country in Northern Ireland. But it was never anything.
Yes.
They never, ever had any views like that because my mum always felt like she was where the English people made me a home. I'm not from here.
Yes.
So why would I be about anybody else?
Yeah. Do you know that is actually refreshing to hear because not all the older generation are harping onto a gone by era where it was just white faces everywhere. My parents, I never heard them say anything homophobic or racist. In fact, my mum and dad loved Danny LaRue.
Oh, God, so did mine. Yes.
They loved Larry Grayson.
Yeah.
And it's only later on in life when, they were gay. My mum's like, no. Really? I also remember that my dad, being a very sort of stoic man, worked very hard, and later on in life, I just found him to be quite cantankerous. So when you displayed an extreme show of gratitude for something. It really took me back. I came back from, I think I was shopping one afternoon, to find my dad at the age of 75 de-weeding my entire garden. And that really shocked me because I never thought he would do anything like that. Would you like to share a moment of supreme gratitude or outlandish ingratitude of something?
So my dad would be particularly rude about presents. And it was only when my husband saw it that you see it, you go, because at Christmas he would be like a child, be very excited about presents. And I would it's really hard to buy for your dad. And I would take ages picking something. And then my dad would just sort of rip it open and throw it aside and go, what's next? Like a toddler. He could be really like a toddler. And he became more like that as he got older. And it's funny because I think my dad was an only child to older parents. And his father died when he was 12. His father was in the First World War.
Wow.
He was old. He'd been gassed. He'd lost half a leg, so that's tough. So he died when my dad was 12. And I went, oh, my dad's an only child and I think, thought he was the only child growing up and was very special and doesn't share well. Didn't even really share my mum well.
Right.
So there's moments, that I think he sort of resented us sometimes, the attention we would get from my mum. And then I remember having an evening, I went home to visit, and my mum was at her, as a bridge club, and I was honestly thought, this is going to be a bit awkward. Because it's just, there'll be awkward conversation. I don't really get on with him the same way I do my mum. And then we had the best evening. He cooked. I suppose that's maybe a bit like your dad gardening, that he cooked. He's a very good cook. And he's going, I'm doing something simple. And then I was like, oh my God, there's 10 saucepans being used. What the hell is this? A mess. But made us a really nice dinner. We had wine. We had a laugh. And I was like, oh my God, he's the most charming company.
Right.
And it was funny because I thought, oh, this is what my mum sees.
Right.
I saw him being bad-tempered, quite selfish. You were never quite sure what his moods were. But one-on-one was very different. Like when he shone his kind of charm on you, I was like, I'm really glad I had that evening to know what it was that my mum liked about it. Now I see it,
So I've got to say, Jo, you've mentioned a couple of things that just resonate. I remember about 16 years of age, there was one night in the house, my dad, it was him and me and my twin sister. And for the first time ever, we started having a conversation about something. I can't remember what it was. Then midway through his answer to us, he just went, oh, what am I even doing to myself? I'm just talking to children. And he left the room.
Oh, God.
And we were just like, wow, this is the one time we could have had some sort of connection. And you've just sort of come out of this trance and stormed off.
Yeah.
And my dad is one of those men who cannot throw things away. They've got 2 sheds in the house, the attic space, and my dad has a lock-up garage that he hasn't looked into for 35 years.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Stuff.
Wow.
And you go, Dad, what's in it? And he tries to remember. You go, there's a few VHS machines, Betamax. I'm like, they're obsolete now. Oh, so they'll come in handy one day. They never will. We don't need another TV in this house. I don't need a bag full of rubber bands.
I said to my mum, St. Bruno tobacco tin that I remember as a child, and she's still got it in a drawer full of buttons because you don't know when you would need to put a button on. And there's still that same drawer, and it's got bits of old cotton reels, buttons, stuff like that. And then my dad, there's his drawer below, which is rubber bands, a plumb line for straightening things, God knows, tools that I remember from years. But my mum and dad are both hoarders.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing is thrown out. And I tried to do a tidy up thing, and then I thought, and it's terrible because I was thinking, look, when you die, it's going to take ages. Can we start getting rid of stuff now? But you can't say that. It's their stuff. Can you?
You can't say that.
I'm just trying to save my stuff time for when you die. But then there's other things that I found, like it was my Holy Communion dress that has also my sister had worn as well. And you go, well, that's a really lovely thing to find. And with that, my mum says she never said it. She did. Right. So we grew up Catholic, but in the RAF, there's not that many Catholics. And that's why we couldn't join the brownies, because you have to pledge allegiance. And my mother wasn't so sure that we should. So I made my first Holy Communion when I was about 9. And I said, Claire Simmons, who was my best friend, I said, can Claire make her Holy Communion? And my mum said, no, because she's not Catholic. And I went, oh, what is she? And my mum went, she's a Protestant. And I said, what's a Protestant? And my mum went, they're wrong. That's what she said. And my mum says, oh, no, she never said that. Because that was a weird thing. Like, it seems so unimportant now, but both my mum and dad came from what were called mixed marriages in Northern Ireland. And that was a big deal then. And it could, like, my grandmother was Catholic. My dad's dad wasn't. He was a civil servant. As soon as they got married, he lost his job in the civil service. You couldn't marry a Catholic and be employed.
Yeah. In terms of health, obviously, as our parents get older and even as we get older, their health starts to decline. My dad has his doctor's direct phone number. However, if his doctor prescribes any medication, my dad won't take it. And I don't know whether that's because as a young man, he never relied on medication. And when we were kids, he didn't give us medication. All he ever gave us was TCP and Vicks Vapor Rub. That was it. Did your parents, were they very strict with medication or not really?
Nobody was ill. I remember people weren't ill. Like you say, I remember iodine, the purple stuff on your knee when you fell over. That happened. And then there was milk of magnesia, which was for all other ailments. My brother and sister got jaundice once, and that was that was quite serious. And I remember I was taken to live with somebody else, and we lost our guinea pig. And afterwards, I realised there was no reason for us to lose the guinea pig. My mum just didn't want it anymore. But she said it would be cruel because it might get jaundice. Of course, it wouldn't get jaundice. But then my dad loved pills. Couldn't get enough of them.
Oh.
He loved to go to the doctors and he loved to be prescribed things, quite the hypochondriac. Also, always looking up things. He was the first person I ever heard talk about selenium and antioxidants and going gluten-free, which I think he did for about a week and then didn't like the bread and stopped it. So he was very fatty, whereas my mum, and then, you see, this is the thing, he was very fatty, always monitoring his health, died. My mum never takes anything, still alive at 90, 2 broken hips, nothing. And because said to me, that when they give you the pills as you leave, they said, oh, there's codeine, obviously, and there's some liquid morphine there for your mother. And then I said to Mum, would you want, my mum said, I'm not having any of that. She goes, I never have codeine. I'll have 2 paracetamols a day, and that'll do me. And they said, well, she can have 8. And she goes, no, I'll have 2. So she goes, and she's right, because if you can get through that pain, much better than to have all this stuff.
Yeah.
Although I was going, I'm stuck in the country, a little bit bored, and there's some codeine right there. I was like, and I was going to Mum, do you know, we could both take some, have a bit of a buzz watching Pointless. Why not?
Is there a catchphrase that you remember from either your childhood or later on in life that was your parents' go-to phrase?
My mum's, and she'll still say it now, and she'll go, now, tell me this and tell me no more. She's got a question to ask you. She'll go, tell me this and tell me no more. And then she'll ask you a question. Tell me this and tell me no more. That's it. But it'll usually be a good subject. It's not like she doesn't want to talk. It'll be like, she'll go, now tell me this and tell me no more. How is your friend Adam, and is he seeing that boy? You know, it'll be like, this is the main topic we need to talk about. I don't want to, no periphery, let's get to it. She's not saying, I just want to ask this one tiny question, then you stop talking. It's like, let's get to the talk.
Right, yes, get to the point. My dad's go-to phrase is, anything you didn't understand, be it politics or film or a chat that we're having, his go-to place at the end of that will be, stuff and nonsense. You mean you didn't understand it?
Yeah.
No, stuff and nonsense. Okay, Dad, you're right, I guess. Well, it's stuff and nonsense. And that's it. You're cue to stop. Jo Caulfield, my dear cornflakes, thank you very much indeed.
What a pleasure. What a pleasure.
So that was Jo Caulfield, who told us that if you're a kid and run away from home, don't forget your essentials. Also, being a new romantic doesn't mean you're gay. And not all children who think there's nothing in the world more incredible than a Knickerbocker Glory and chewy American cookies are greedy. Just a little delving into what makes some parents tick. And we've got to know them a little bit better. So, that's old, folks. You've been listening to Me, I Blame the Parents, starring me, Stephen K. Amos, special guest Jo Caulfield, produced by Hugh Sington,